The Grand Galactic Chamber buzzed with restless energy as representatives from thousands of species gathered, expecting yet another routine vote on planetary conquest. At the central podium, Admiral Doran Rourke stood tall, his crystalline exoskeleton shimmering under the chamber's kaleidoscopic lights. His four secondary arms tapped rhythmically against the podium's surface, a clear sign of impatience, while his primary hands adjusted the hollow projector. "Esteemed members of the Genvari Assembly," he announced, his voice laced with a carefully cultivated sense of authority. "We convene today to discuss the fate of Solar System 331, specifically, its third planet, Earth." He uttered the name as if it left a bitter taste in his mouth. A ripple of laughter and amused chittering spread through the massive chamber. Council member Vexal Mern, a gelatinous mass of neural tissue suspended in a containment sphere, bobbed in clear amusement. "The primitives? The ones still fighting over patches of dirt?" Vexal Mern's voice oozed condescension. "Precisely." Rourke's metallic teeth gleamed in a smug grin. A well-maintained set, a clear symbol of prestige among his kind. "Our long-range surveillance confirms they've barely made it beyond their own moon. They dedicate more effort to producing entertainment about space travel than actually achieving it." The laughter in the chamber grew louder. Representative Genthis Arak of the Krizari Computa projected a smirking emoji across their crystalline form, a silent but pointed mockery. Raising all six arms, Rourke signaled for silence. "However," he continued, his tone shifting to one of grave concern, "these humans have shown troubling patterns of rapid technological progress. Our predictive models indicate they could develop viable faster-than-light travel within the next 50 cycles." A hushed murmur spread through the assembly. No one had forgotten the Zelnari incident. No one wanted to recall how an allegedly primitive race had, seemingly overnight, developed quantum weaponry and annihilated 3 invasion fleets before the word cooperation could even be uttered. "That is why," Rourke pressed on, bringing up a holographic projection of Earth's military capabilities, "I propose the implementation of Standard Containment Protocol 447. We strike now, while they're still flinging chemical rockets at the debris in their orbit." Council member Zephyr Dalco, whose species bore a striking resemblance to Earth's sea cucumbers, raised a sensory stalk. "Admiral, our research suggests that humans have an unusual affinity for violence. They have created thousands of simulated scenarios involving alien invasions, and in most of them, they emerge victorious." Rourke barked out a laugh, his amusement echoing through the chamber. "Oh yes, because their fiction is surely a strategic concern. Tell me, Zephyr, should we also fear their imaginary superheroes? Their mystical space wizards wielding glowing swords? Please." Another wave of laughter erupted, and even Zephyr's sensory stalk wiggled awkwardly in what might have been embarrassment. "The fact remains," Rourke said, his voice regaining its authoritative edge, "that humans are dangerously unpredictable. They progressed from crude flight to atomic warfare in under 50 years. Their information networks are chaotic, their social structures constantly shifting. Frankly, they're a destabilizing force waiting to happen." The representative from the Vayrith Enclave, a shimmering cloud of probability fields, pulsed with measured concern. "What of their creative potential, their art, their music?" Rourke dismissed the thought with a casual wave. "Preserved, of course, in our cultural archives, along with a few select specimens for our xenological preserves. The rest will be processed into a productive labor force. Standard procedure." One by one, the voting indicators lit up across the chamber, species after species, civilization after civilization, all voting in favor of containment. Even the usually pacifist Ilarian Unity cast their vote, though their representative looked distinctly uneasy about it. Rourke's grin widened with each confirmation. The humans had a rather charming phrase for such moments. Slam dunk, he believed they called it. He would have to remember that for his victory speech. "Motion carries unanimously," the central AI declared. "Containment fleet deployment scheduled within one standard cycle. Admiral Doran Rourke will oversee operations." As the chamber began to empty, Zephyr Dalco slithered closer. "Admiral, one final concern. The humans have a saying that seems relevant. We learn from history that we do not learn from history." Rourke waved a dismissive hand. "Please, what could possibly go wrong? They still think digital watches are an impressive achievement." He turned to leave, already composing orders for his fleet commanders. Behind him, the holographic projection of Earth slowly rotated, its blue-green surface tranquil, deceptively serene. In hindsight, that should have been their first warning. Nothing in the galaxy ever remained that quiet unless it was hiding something particularly nasty. Standing on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Victory, Admiral Rourke watched with barely contained excitement as his invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace. 10,000 warships, the pride of the Genvari Assembly, descended like a storm of mechanical locusts around Earth's moon. "Status report," he commanded, straightening his ceremonial Victory cape. He had commissioned it specifically for this occasion. "No sign of detection, Admiral," his sensor officer reported. "Their primitive radar systems are still locked onto their own satellites. Shall we jam their communications?" Rourke chuckled. No. Let them see us coming. I want to savor their panic." The fleet advanced in flawless formation, executing maneuvers they had rehearsed countless times. As Earth grew larger on the main display, Rourke opened a channel to all ships. "Minimal casualties," he reminded them. "The Assembly wants them intact for processing. Standard shock and awe." His speech was abruptly cut short as proximity alarms blared across the bridge. "Admiral, multiple inbound objects." The sensor officer's voice cracked with disbelief. "That can't be right. They're moving at 0.15 light speed." "Impossible!" Rourke whirled toward the main display. "Their fastest ships barely—" The first wave of kinetic kill vehicles struck with devastating force. Tungsten rods launched from hidden mass drivers on the far side of the moon tore through shields engineered to withstand energy weapons. Warships designed to endure plasma barrages were shredded like paper under the sheer kinetic force of what were, essentially, hyper-accelerated rocks. Amid the chaos, a transmission overrode their command frequencies. A human face appeared on every screen in the fleet. Commander Olivia Carter, leader of the Earth Defense Forces, looked less than impressed. "Welcome to the Sol system," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "I see you've encountered our first line of defense," Carter remarked smoothly. "Would you like to meet the second?" Admiral Doran Rourke's mandibles clicked in barely restrained fury. "You dare?" he spat. "Your species isn't even supposed to have this technology. Our intelligence reports—" "Were exactly what we wanted you to see," Carter interrupted, flashing an infuriatingly calm smile. "Those reality shows about flat Earth believers? The endless social media feuds over whether space is even real? Carefully curated content for your long-range observers. We call it Project Smokescreen." Rourke's secondary hearts nearly seized as new sensor contacts began appearing throughout his fleet. One by one, sleek, shadowy platforms materialized from thin air, shedding the invisibility that had rendered them undetectable. Their hulls seemed to consume light itself. "You see," Carter continued, inspecting her nails with casual disinterest, "we detected your first probe ship centuries ago. Ever since we've been watching you watching us. Those so-called primitive chemical rockets, they weren't just carrying satellites. We've had a defensive grid in place long before you assumed we'd even figured out reliable television." Another wave of kinetic weapons struck. The inevitable Victory shuddered as nearby ships erupted into fiery wreckage. Rourke's horrified gaze locked onto a vessel 3 times the size of his flagship. One moment intact, the next sliced clean in half by what could only be described as a focused gravity beam. "That's impossible," he breathed, his mind struggling to reconcile what he was witnessing. "You don't have gravity manipulation technology. You still burn fossil fuels." Carter laughed. "Oh, those oil fields? Fantastic cover for our zero-point energy infrastructure. Helps sell the whole Primitive Species Act when half our population still argues about windmills." The human commander leaned forward, her expression turning ice cold. "Here's what's going to happen next. We've locked quantum entanglement fields around your entire fleet. Your fancy FTL drives? About as useful now as a screen door on a submarine." Rourke's bridge crew was already abandoning their stations as more human warships emerged from hiding. Their designs were wrong. No standardized structure, no aesthetic unity. Some looked as if they had been carved directly from asteroids. Others flickered between dimensions as if refusing to exist in only one. "But the containment protocols," Rourke stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Assembly voted unanimously." "Ah, yes, that." Carter's smile turned downright predatory. "Funny thing, we've had agents embedded in your Assembly for years. That unanimous vote? We just wanted to see who our real friends were." She shrugged. Spoiler alert, didn't find any. A fresh alarm blared across the bridge. The sensor officer, one of the last still at his post, turned to Rourke, appendages trembling. "Admiral, They're hacking our shields. They're using our own encryption against us. Rourke let out a strangled sound, part rage, part sheer disbelief. Standard containment protocols, he howled. This was supposed to be standard. Oh, sweetheart, Carter interrupted, her voice almost pitying. Nothing about Earth is standard, she exhaled, stretching leisurely. Now, about those processing centers you were planning to build for us. Her lips curled. Funny story. Before Rourke could process what she meant, his ship systems abruptly cut to black. His last sight before everything went dark was Carter making a subtle hand gesture. In perfect unison, thousands of human vessels shifted into attack formation. Their hulls bore symbols in countless languages, insignias from every nation on Earth. They had united without the galaxy ever realizing, built a defense force in plain sight, while alien civilizations watched cat videos and bickered over Earth's politics. As emergency lighting flickered on, Rourke collapsed into his command chair. His victory cape, so carefully designed for this moment, suddenly felt unbearably ridiculous. "Send the surrender signal," he whispered. A voice from the comm station replied dryly, "Already did, sir." They responded with something called a GIF of a human dancing on a fallen opponent. Somewhere, in the depths of space, Carter was probably still smiling, and Rourke realized with absolute certainty that was going to be the least of his problems. Captain Ethan Sullivan lounged in the cockpit of the EDF Karma, watching surrender signals from the alien fleet flood his tactical display. His ship, disguised as an unremarkable asteroid for the past 3 years, had finally dropped its camouflage. The Karma wasn't exactly pretty. Its hull was a chaotic patchwork of experimental tech, jury-rigged modifications, and enough custom enhancements to give any traditional engineer an aneurysm. "Command, this is Karma Actual," Sullivan broadcasted, grinning. "Ready to initiate Phase 2 on your mark." Carter's voice crackled through the quantum comm. "Phase 2 is go, Ethan. Try not to enjoy this too much." "Me? Never," Sullivan said, his grin widening as he powered up the Karma's primary weapons. "Just gonna teach our friends a thing or two about proper galactic citizenship." The Karma's engines, reverse-engineered from a dozen different alien technologies, hummed to life. Around it, 50 other asteroid ships shed their disguises, their surfaces rippling as adaptive camouflage deactivated. Each vessel bore the mark of a different Earth nation, yet they moved with the precision of a single, well-oiled machine. "All ships execute Operation Payback," Sullivan commanded. The human fleet split into pre-planned attack groups, targeting the Genvari Assembly's own jump gate network, the same network originally intended to invade Earth. Now it would serve a different purpose. "First target acquired," Sullivan announced as the Karma locked onto its shot. "Sending our regards to the Genvari Assembly." The ship's main gun, a monstrosity that bent probability itself, fired. A cascade of quantum-locked particles surged through the jump gate. Physics screamed in protest. The gate's destination forcibly rewrote itself, rerouting the energy surge to an entirely new location, straight into the heart of the assembly chamber. Aboard the inevitable Victory, now his prison, Admiral Rourke sat in stunned silence as fresh reports flooded his captor's consoles. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were launching a coordinated counterattack through the very infrastructure meant to contain them. "How?" he demanded, staring at his guards. "How did you build all of this without us noticing?" The human soldier manning the security station snorted. "Ever wonder why we've got so many conspiracy theories about secret military bases?" He smirked. "Best way to hide a real base? Bury it under 1,000 fake ones," another guard chimed in. "You know all those UFO sightings everyone jokes about? Test flights. And the crop circles?" the first soldier added. "Landing pad markers." He shrugged. "We've been hiding this right in front of you for decades." On the bridge of the Karma, Sullivan watched the chaos unfold and shook his head, laughing. "Man," he muttered to himself, "they really should have paid more attention to our sci-fi." Sullivan watched with satisfaction as his fleet systematically secured one jump gate after another. Each capture unlocked new pathways for their assault, while the Genvari Assembly's military response was nothing short of pathetic. Disorganized, panicked, utterly unprepared. Clearly, they had never considered the possibility of needing to defend themselves against the very species they had planned to enslave. "Captain," his tactical officer called out, sounding almost amused, "the Krizari computer is attempting to hack our networks." Sullivan smirked. "Let them try. They're about to learn why we invented computer viruses for fun." The Krasari computer, a vast network of crystalline supercomputers, renowned for their superior processing capabilities, had precisely 3 seconds to regret their decision. A digital counterattack, unleashed with surgical precision, tore through their defenses. 1,000 different viruses, each one originally crafted by bored teenagers and later refined by military-grade AI, spread like wildfire through their systems. "Did we just rickroll an entire artificial civilization?" someone asked, incredulous. Sullivan grinned, humming the familiar tune. "Never gonna give you up." The Krasari computer withdrew in utter confusion. Across assembly-controlled space, carefully laid plans crumbled. The Alarian Unity, in a desperate attempt to de-escalate the situation, attempted to broadcast calming psychic waves, only to realize that humanity had developed an unexpected natural resistance through years of social media arguments. The Varith Enclave, relying on its probability-driven foresight, struggled to predict human tactics. But every time they accounted for logical strategies, the humans did something entirely illogical, and, infuriatingly, those tactics worked better than conventional warfare. Through the chaos, Carter's voice cut in. "Status report, Captain." "Phase 2 is ahead of schedule," Sullivan reported, watching yet another assembly battle group surrender. "Turns out these guys really don't know how to handle an enemy that doesn't fight by the book." He paused. "Almost feel bad for them." "Almost," Carter echoed dryly. Through intercepted communication channels, the humans could hear the assembly species turning on each other. The blame game had begun. "The humans were supposed to be primitive. Your intelligence claimed they were decades away from FTL travel. How were we supposed to know they'd weaponize their own stupidity?" Sullivan pulled up a live feed of battles across the sector. One particular image made him chuckle. A Genvari assembly dreadnought, supposedly the pride of their fleet, was currently being towed away by what appeared to be a converted garbage scow. Humans had learned early that nobody pays attention to the ships collecting space debris. The Karma's sensors flared, picking up an immense energy spike from Earth's direction. Lunar defense platforms, now fully visible, were powering up for something big. "All ships, clear the area," Carter ordered. "Time to show them our new toy." The device, affectionately dubbed the Humanity Stick, because someone in R&D had a very twisted sense of humor, activated. A focused beam, powered by a quantum computer running on pure human logic, lanced across space. Where it struck, probability itself shattered. Highly advanced assembly warships suddenly found their cutting-edge targeting systems repurposed for something utterly nonsensical. Some weapons refused to fire, instead displaying a cheerful out-of-office message. One flagship spontaneously transformed into a giant rubber duck for precisely 3.7 seconds before snapping back to normal. The crew, understandably, looked deeply traumatized. Sullivan shook his head, watching the madness unfold. "That's just mean." Meanwhile, in the assembly chamber, now accessible thanks to the humans' creative use of redirected jump gates, chaos reigned. The same representatives who had so confidently voted to contain humanity were now living the consequences of that decision. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were enjoying it. "This is impossible," Council Member Zephyr Dalco wailed, their sensory stalk waving wildly. "Their technological level, their coordination, their weapons." Sullivan's voice broadcast across all frequencies. "Oh, right. About those weapons." He leaned back, smirking. "Turns out, when you tell humans they can't do something, their immediate reaction is to figure out exactly how to do it. Your containment protocols? We've got an entire research division dedicated to breaking them. They hold monthly competitions." The Karma's crew erupted into cheers as the last major assembly fleet in the sector powered down its weapons in surrender. On the ship's primary screen, Admiral Rourke, now a prisoner aboard his own flagship, watched in despair as hundreds of human vessels revealed themselves. Some had been disguised as floating debris, others had hidden in dimensional pockets, and a few had apparently been following assembly ships for months without being noticed. Sullivan opened a channel to the captured admiral. "So, about that processing center you were planning to build," he grinned. "We've got an idea. How do you feel about cultural exchange programs? Mandatory ones?" Rourke sank deeper into his chair, staring blankly ahead. Maybe, if he retired to a quiet agricultural world, far away from all of this, he could pretend none of it had happened. Unfortunately for him, humanity had already mapped every habitable planet in the sector. There would be no escaping their new galactic neighbors. And they were just getting started. The emergency session of the Genvari Assembly bore no resemblance to the confident, authoritative meeting from just a week ago. Gone were the polished holograms and dramatic lighting. Now, nervous representatives huddled in their seats, watching as Ambassador Lariah Vaughn prepared to negotiate with the humans. Vaughn, chosen specifically for her reputation as a calm, diplomatic negotiator, stood at the same podium where Admiral Rourke had once declared victory. Her bioluminescent glow, normally a soothing blue, had shifted into a sickly green. The human delegation materialized in the center of the chamber. No ships, no visible technology. They simply appeared, as if to remind the assembly exactly why their containment vote had been a spectacularly bad idea. Carter led the group, flanked by Sullivan and several other military officers. They had brought folding chairs and snacks. Vaughn took a steadying breath. "Honored representatives of Earth," she began, her translator struggling to maintain a neutral tone. "We gather here today to discuss terms of mutual cooperation and—" Sullivan popped a piece of popcorn into his mouth. "Oh, now it's mutual?" he chewed thoughtfully. "Funny how that works." Carter raised a hand, signaling him to hold back, though the amused glint in her eye suggested she wasn't entirely opposed to the comment. "Please, Ambassador Vaughn," she said, smiling just enough to be unsettling. "We're very interested in hearing about this sudden desire for cooperation." The Assembly's AI, attempting to generate an appropriate negotiation atmosphere, became confused by the humans' casual demeanor and settled for an odd mix of dramatic shadows and disco effects. Vaughn soldiered on, her bioluminescence now practically strobing from stress. "The Assembly acknowledges," she forced out, "that certain assumptions were made regarding Earth's technological capabilities." Carter raised an eyebrow. "Assumptions?" She folded her arms. "You voted to enslave our entire species. That's not an assumption. That's a declaration of war." "Speaking of which," she continued, reaching into her jacket, "I brought some reading material for our new allies." The Assembly braced themselves. Something told them the humans were not about to make this easy. Carter casually held up a tablet. "We've been going through the Assembly's records," she said, scrolling. "Fascinating reading." Several representatives visibly shrank in their seats. Others suddenly remembered urgent business on the far side of the galaxy. "Did you know," Carter continued, barely suppressing a smirk, "that 17 different species in this very room have attempted to claim Earth as their property over the past century alone?" She tilted the tablet slightly. "We have paperwork. Some of you even filed multiple claims." Vaughn's bioluminescent glow flickered erratically, like a glitching status light. "Those were administrative oversights," she attempted weakly. "Administrative oversights?" Sullivan cut in, arching a brow. "Backed by invasion fleets?" He grinned. "Yeah, those fleets. They're currently being repurposed as modern art installations around Saturn." Vaughn's glow sputtered completely, shifting into random chaotic patches of color like a malfunctioning LED display. "The Assembly is prepared to offer significant reparations." "Oh, we're way past that," Carter said, waving dismissively. "Here are our terms." A hologram materialized above the chamber. Unlike the standard Assembly projections, this one seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, instantly giving several representatives headaches. "First," Carter began, "Earth will be recognized as a sovereign system with full defensive rights. Any unauthorized entry will be met with our more creative defense systems." "The rubber duck generator was my favorite," Sullivan whispered to a nearby officer. Several Assembly members who had personally experienced that particular weapon shuddered. "Second," Carter continued, "all records regarding Earth and Assembly archives will be corrected." She smiled. "Yes, we know about the secret archives. All of them. Even the ones in that dimension you thought we couldn't access." Vaughn and several others drooped visibly. They had really believed that Dimensional Pocket was secure. "Third," Carter went on, "every species that voted for our containment will participate in mandatory cultural exchange programs. You wanted to study humans?" She spread her arms. "Congratulations, you're getting your wish, up close and personal." But the logistics," Vaughn stammered. "Already handled," Sullivan cut in smoothly. "We've got university students who need housing, cultural ambassadors looking for exhibition spaces, and let's not forget the tourism industry." He grinned. "Hope you like human food trucks, because they're coming, whether you want them or not." A ripple of panic spread through the chamber. Someone muttered something about human music, and several representatives nearly fainted. "Fourth," Carter continued, thoroughly enjoying the growing chaos. We will be establishing Earth embassies on every assembly world. Don't worry, we'll handle the construction. She gestured toward the hologram. Our architects have wonderful ideas about merging human aesthetics with your architectural styles. Brutalism meets crystal spires, Sullivan nodded sagely. Very avant-garde. Vaughn, realizing her diplomatic career was effectively over, made one last attempt. And if we refuse these terms? The human delegation exchanged knowing glances. Carter smiled. Remember that device we used to redirect your jump gates? She tilted her head. Turns out it works on planets too. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Anyone interested in a sudden relocation to the galactic core? Vaughn gasped. You wouldn't. Sullivan's grin was downright cheerful. Try us. He leaned back. We've literally got a betting pool on which assembly species will volunteer to be the example. The vote to accept Earth's terms was even faster than the original containment vote. Representatives practically trampled each other to register their compliance. Wonderful, Carter said, standing and dusting off her uniform. We'll begin implementation immediately. She turned, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. She pointed at the chamber's central AI core. Your computer systems desperately need an upgrade. She smiled. Don't worry, we've already started the process. A familiar tune began playing over the chamber's speakers. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Vaughn's glow dimmed to an almost ashen shade. You didn't, Sullivan beamed. We did. He clapped his hands together. Don't worry, it only plays during formal assembly sessions, and emergencies, and holidays. Speaking of which, Carter added, we're introducing those too. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Carter turned back one last time. Oh, and Ambassador Vaughn? She smiled sweetly. Admiral Rourke sends his regards. He's currently teaching a masterclass on humility at our Lunar Defense Academy. She winked. The students find his first-hand experience very educational. The humans vanished as abruptly as they had arrived, leaving behind folding chairs, empty snack packets, and a chamber full of assembly representatives contemplating whether retirement was still an option. The only sound was the endless loop of Rick Astley's greatest hit, now permanently embedded in the Assembly's AI core. As far as negotiations went, it could have been worse. At least the humans hadn't mentioned their plans for galactic food delivery services, yet. 6 months later, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Carter stood on the observation deck of humanity's first official galactic embassy, watching as alien ships jostled to enter Earth's booming trade zones. Her aide approached, holding a crystalline structure that pulsed with complex algorithms. Another gift basket from the Krizari Computa, the aide reported. They're offering us exclusive rights to their quantum computing technology. Carter sighed, glancing toward a storage room already overflowing with similar offerings. Put it with the others, she said, gesturing vaguely. Right next to the antimatter power cores from the Valtheris Dominion, the aide confirmed, and the dimensional folding technology from the Vayrith Enclave. Down below, Sullivan was engaged in what he called cultural enrichment sessions with various alien species. Currently, he was explaining the concept of fast food to a horrified delegation from the Silthari Communion. So, one alien hesitated, its photosynthetic appendages wilting. You're telling us humans intentionally consume food with no nutritional value just because it tastes good? Sullivan grinned, unwrapping a burger. Buddy, wait until you hear about competitive eating contests. The alien stared, fascinated and horrified, as he dipped a French fry into a milkshake. 3 of them immediately signed up for franchise rights. Meanwhile, in what had once been the Assembly's most prestigious shopping district, human businesses were popping up faster than anyone could track. A shop selling nothing but human memes had a line stretching around the block. Next door, an Earth Antique store was doing brisk business, specializing in vintage Nokia phones. To technology collectors, they were priceless. To everyone else, they're indestructible, the shop owner explained, holding up a vintage Nokia phone as alien customers watched in awe. To prove his point, he casually dropped it onto the chamber's crystalline floor. The floor cracked. The phone didn't. The former assembly chamber, now repurposed into what humans called a food court, was packed with alien diplomats, all vying for Earth's favor. Some were offering exclusive trade deals. Others were attempting to decipher the nuances of human cuisine. Ambassador Lariah Vaughn, who had somehow managed to keep her position by becoming an expert in human diplomatic practices, observed the chaos with resigned amusement. The Shirak swarm is offering exclusive mining rights in their sector, she informed Carter during their weekly briefing. They've also expressed interest in something called Netflix. Carter didn't even look up from her tablet. Tell them they can have streaming services when they stop trying to reverse engineer our meme warfare systems. Vaughn sighed. And the Varith Enclave? Still trying to spy on our research facilities, Carter replied, smirking. How did you... Carter finally glanced up. We caught their probability scouts trying to blend in at a comic convention. She shook her head. Apparently, they didn't realize humans would notice entities phasing in and out of multiple realities while arguing about superhero movies. The Galactic Exchange, once the heart of the Assembly's economic power, had been entirely reshaped by human traders. Concepts like artificial scarcity and limited edition collectibles had thrown several alien economies into chaos. 3 species had already crashed their financial systems trying to corner the market on Earth memorabilia. Supreme Commander, a junior officer interrupted, looking deeply concerned. We have a situation with the Krasari computer, again. Carter sighed. What now? They discovered cat videos on the data package we sent them. There was a pause. And? Their entire network has been, the officer hesitated, compromised. Carter pulled up the live feed, then promptly burst into laughter. The Krasari computer, a vast and incomprehensibly powerful AI civilization, had devoted 30% of their processing power to creating and sharing their own cat videos. Their holographic felines defied multiple known laws of physics. Sullivan, peering over her shoulder, whistled. That's impressive, actually. Let them be, Carter decided. It's better than their last obsession with human soap operas. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic quarter, Sullivan was dealing with his own crisis. The Ilarian Unity had attempted to psychically understand human sports fans, and were now recovering from what they described as a devastating wave of inexplicable emotional attachment to arbitrary teams. At least they didn't try to comprehend fantasy football leagues, Sullivan muttered, signing off on yet another request for human cultural advisors. The former invasion fleet, now converted into an interactive museum, orbited Earth's moon, serving as a permanent reminder of the Assembly's miscalculation. Admiral Doran Rourke's once mighty flagship had been repurposed into a gift shop. The Admiral himself, now something of a celebrity, spent his days giving guest lectures at various galactic universities. Topic: How not to underestimate primitive species. Vaughn approached Carter with a new stack of trade proposals. The Assembly species have a concern, she admitted hesitantly. Carter arched an eyebrow. What now? They think, Vaughn sighed. You're moving too slowly. Carter blinked. Excuse me? Vaughn hesitated, then pressed on. They expected you to immediately colonize half the galaxy. The waiting is making them nervous. Carter laughed. Tell them we're expanding exactly as fast as we want to, she smirked. Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. She took a sip of coffee. Besides, we're busy teaching your species how to make decent coffee first. The mere mention of coffee caused several nearby aliens to perk up. The drink had become a galactic sensation, despite causing mild hallucinations in 7 different species, or perhaps because of it. Final item, Vaughn checked her notes. The Krasari computer is requesting permission to establish a meme-based economy built around human cultural artifacts. Carter and Sullivan immediately responded in unison. Denied. Vaughn frowned. But the galaxy isn't ready for cryptocurrency, Carter explained. Give it another century or 2. As night fell over the galactic capital, now thoroughly transformed by human influence, Carter stood on the embassy's observation deck, watching the endless flow of ships through the jump gate network. Each vessel carried a piece of Earth's culture to some distant world, spreading humanity's reach far more effectively than any invasion fleet ever could. You know what the funniest part is? She mused. Sullivan glanced up. What? They could have just... Carter gestured vaguely. Asked nicely for cultural exchange in the first place. Sullivan smirked. Where's the fun in that? He nodded toward a group of aliens struggling to figure out how to eat tacos without violating the laws of physics. Besides, he added, I don't think the galaxy was ready for us until they realized how badly they needed us. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of K-pop music drifted from an alien nightclub. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity wouldn't have it any other way. 1 year after the failed invasion, the Genvari Assembly celebrated its first human-style anniversary. To the utter confusion of many alien delegates, the event featured party hats, confetti, and an Earth delicacy known as pizza. Carter stood at the very same podium where Admiral Rourke had once proclaimed humanity's doom. The Admiral himself now sat in the audience, wearing a Hawaiian shirt over his crystalline exoskeleton. Apparently, he had developed a taste for Earth fashion, claimed the loud patterns helped hide his embarrassment. Friends, allies, and former would-be conquerors, Carter began, prompting nervous laughter from the assembled species. What a difference a year makes. The chamber, recently renovated in what humans called a retrofuturistic style, hummed with agreement. The assembly AI, now thoroughly corrupted by human memes, projected celebratory emojis across the walls. A year ago, Carter continued, you all voted to contain humanity. She gestured to the crowd. Today, you're competing to host our exchange students. She smirked. I'd call that personal growth. Sullivan, standing nearby, added, and only 3 economic collapses from meme trading. That's better than we expected. The Krizari computer representatives flickered in embarrassment. Their last attempt to create an AI based on human social media had resulted in an entity that only communicated in outdated references and cat pictures. Carter smiled. But perhaps, she glanced around the room, the greatest change has been in galactic politics itself. She leaned forward. Who would have thought, she said, that the species you plan to enslave would end up teaching you about democracy? Assembly members shifted uncomfortably. Humanity's insistence on representative government had caused quite a stir. Several once absolute monarchies had been forced to adopt constitutions after their populations discovered the concept of voting. And let's not forget the cultural changes, Sullivan added. Anyone else remember when the Varith Enclave claimed they were above primitive entertainment? He smirked. Now they're the galaxy's leading producer of reality TV. The Varith Enclave delegates tried to look dignified. It was difficult, considering their probability fields were still flickering with reruns of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Carter continued, of course, there have been some unexpected developments. Who knew the Alarian Unity would become so addicted to human sports? She gestured at a data screen. They're currently hosting 3 soccer leagues and a curling tournament. One of the Alarian Unity representatives nodded. The violence is quite soothing, they explained, compared to human political debates anyway. Ambassador Vaughn, now proudly holding a Galaxy's okayest diplomat coffee mug, stepped up to deliver her own report. Human influence has spread to 60% of known space, she stated. She glanced at her notes, primarily through what they call viral marketing and social media trends. She hesitated. We're still trying to understand how they managed to conquer the Drakthar Imperium with something called TikTok dances. Sullivan grinned. The Drakthar warriors were particularly susceptible to dance challenges. He shrugged. Turns out it's hard to maintain an aggressive military stance when your troops are too busy learning choreography. Carter raised her hand. But perhaps, she said, the most ironic twist in all of this. She turned toward Admiral Rourke. You'll appreciate this one. The former admiral barely looked up from his tablet, where he appeared to be playing something called Angry Birds. Carter smirked. The containment protocols you plan to use on us? She folded her arms. We reverse-engineered them all. She let the words hang in the air. And guess what we found? The chamber went deathly silent. They were human technology all along. She let that sink in. Stolen from our research networks by your spies, modified slightly, then presented as your own work. She tilted her head. You literally tried to conquer us with our own inventions. The silence was only broken by the sound of Rourke face-palming, with all 6 hands. So, Carter concluded, raising a glass, here's to another year of human galactic cooperation, she grinned. We've got some exciting things planned. She leaned forward. Wait until you see what happens when we introduce you to the concept of social media influencers. Several species immediately began filing for cultural protection status. Sullivan chuckled. And remember, he added, Earth's planetary defense grid is still active, just in case anyone starts feeling nostalgic for the good old days of invasion plans. As the celebration continued, Council member Zephyr Dalco slithered up to Carter, their sensory stalks twitching with curiosity. Commander, they asked hesitantly, I must know, did you really plan all of this? The cultural infiltration, the technological revelations, everything? Carter looked at them, then at the chamber full of species who had once voted unanimously to enslave humanity. Now they were trading Earth memes, arguing over human sports teams and trying to figure out how to eat hot dogs without choking. She leaned in slightly. "Let me tell you a secret," she said. "The best plan is the one that works, even when it isn't a plan at all." She took a sip of her coffee. "We just did what humans always do: adapt, share our culture, and turn potential enemies into friends who are mildly annoyed with us." Zephyr's stalks twitched thoughtfully. "That's either brilliant or insane," they observed. Carter smirked. "Why not both?" She stretched, cracking her knuckles. "That's humanity's secret weapon." She glanced around the room. "Now," she grinned, "who's ready to learn about karaoke?" The galaxy would never be the same. But then again, that had been the plan all along. Or had it? The humans weren't telling. They were too busy teaching the Krizari computer how to dab.